Hi, and welcome to another presentation from your business tutor, learning your way, anytime, anywhere. The relationship between an organisation and its employees can be a complicated and challenging one. If managed effectively, the outcome will be positive. However, if it breaks down, the consequences can be severe. It is therefore essential, as this presentation will look at, that strong industrial relations are maintained between an organisation and its staff. So what are we going to learn in this presentation? Well, first of all, we're going to find out what a trade union is. Then we're going to identify what industrial relations is. After that, we're going to find out about the organisations involved in industrial relations. And then finally, we're going to explore the consequences of industrial action. Okay, let's get started with our first question, which is, what is a trade union? A trade union is an organisation that represents employees in their workplace in order to protect and improve their conditions of employment. Historically, trade unions have worked within a particular industry, for example, the National Education Union. However, more recently, there have been an increasing number of unions, such as Unite, that represent workers across a range of industries. The main purpose behind a trade union is the idea that working together as one, a workforce will have more strength when negotiating with an employer over pay and conditions than an individual employee would have alone. In short, by speaking as a single voice, a trade union believes it will not only be able to achieve better pay and conditions for its members, but also improved job security and a safer working environment. More than that though, trade unions also provide individual support to members when a dispute arises over their contract or if they are involved in a grievance or disciplinary procedure. Nevertheless, although such support is useful, over the last 40 years there has been a fall in trade union membership as traditionally unionised industries such as mining and steel have reduced in size and been replaced by service sector jobs that are not as unionised. Okay, let's now turn to find out what industrial relations are. Industrial relations refers to the three-way relationship between an organisation, a trade union and the workers it represents. The relationship from an employer's perspective is all about improving productivity and output in the workplace, whereas from a trade union and an employee perspective, the relationship is about job security, pay and conditions. Given this difference in perspective, it is essential that both sides are willing to negotiate with each other so that an agreement can be reached over these issues. If, however, this does not happen or negotiations break down, the outcome can be industrial action, which is what we will look at now. Industrial action refers to any measure a trade union or employees take to disrupt a workplace in order to influence the employer to meet their demands over pay and working conditions. However, although this sounds fairly straightforward, it needs to be remembered that before any action can be taken, a ballot of a trade union's members must take place, and over 50% of those that vote must be in favour of taking action. If this is achieved, the following types of action may be taken. First, an overtime ban may be put in place, which involves employees refusing to work additional hours above those stated in their contract, whereas a work to rule involves employees only completing the tasks stated in their contract or job description. On the other hand, employees could put in place a go slow, which is when, on purpose, they work at a slower rate. Whereas, alternatively, employees could enter their workplace in order to occupy it, but then refuse to carry out any work. This is referred to as a sit-in. This, of course, leaves us with the most disruptive of measures, which is a strike. And this is when employees refuse to work or enter the workplace. In fact, when strike action occurs, it is often associated with picketing, which is when employees stand outside their work protesting over how they have been treated. However, although industrial action is usually instigated by a trade union, it is the case that an employer can also take action. For example, the two most common measures used are overtime withdrawal, when management refuse to give employees additional hours, and a lockout, where an employer refuses to let employees enter the workplace. As can be seen, there are a number of ways of taking industrial action. However, how effective they are in influencing the other side to change its position is dependent upon what impact they have. Let's look at that now by asking, what impact can industrial action have on employers and employees? Industrial action such as an overtime ban or a go slow can have a really big effect on a business, because it means contracts that have a deadline or sudden surges in demand cannot be met. This can be a big problem for a business, because if they can't produce enough to meet a deadline or consumer demand, customers will be left unhappy and in future may take their business elsewhere. This could be worse still for a business, as sometimes in a contract, if a deadline is not met, a business will be fined. Of course, even if employees only work to rule, this can cause issues as well, in so much that removing all those gestures of goodwill where employees cover other jobs when staff are off ill, or attend meetings during lunch breaks, or work alternative hours to cover holidays, makes it far harder for a business to run efficiently. In fact, removing sickness and holiday cover can leave a business understaffed in key areas, meaning customer service is negatively affected. And of course, having to hold meetings during working hours means output will be lower, or overtime will have to be provided. Having said all that, the most disruptive forms of industrial action are those that stop production completely, such as a sit-in or a strike. In both these instances, nothing will be produced, meaning the business will have to shut down, meaning customers may take their business elsewhere. And of course, if employees are picketing outside the business, and this gains press coverage, the reputation of the business can be negatively affected, especially if the general public take the employee's side in the dispute. Put this all together and what you have is a perfect storm. An organisation unable to produce or sell anything that will lose customers and hence see its profits fall. Add to this that industrial action will negatively affect the relationship that exists between management and employees. And you can see that even when the dispute ends, that the harmony within the organisation may be irreparably damaged. Having said all that, the consequences of industrial action are not just restricted to an employer. For example, if employees refuse to work or an employer enacts a lockout, workers will not be paid, meaning they will find it hard to meet all their monthly household bills. Equally, if employees ban overtime or employers withdraw it, once again workers will be hit in their wallets, and if they rely upon overtime payments, they may have to cut back on luxuries such as going on holiday. Further still, even after an industrial dispute has ended, problems can still arise, in that the relationship between employees and management may be so fractured that they're unable to get on and therefore don't work well together. However, and this is the worst outcome for employees, sometimes the result of industrial action can be that the business closes down. This is because the negative effects of long-running industrial action on a business, such as the loss of customers, are so severe that it is no longer profitable to carry on. As has been shown, the impacts of industrial action can be severe, and if possible, should be avoided. So with that in mind, let's turn to our final question and ask, What is the role of Acas in industrial disputes? The Advisory, Conciliation and Arbitration Service, or Acas for short, is a government-funded organisation tasked with providing independent and impartial advice to employees, trade unions and employers to help improve industrial relations in the UK. How it does this is through the provision of a number of services, such as providing advice on employment law and maintaining a positive working environment, as well as training courses on dealing with workplace problems. However, and perhaps more importantly, Acas also provide a conciliation service where they provide assistance to resolve industrial disputes by helping both sides find common ground from where they can restart negotiations and then help them come up with solutions so an agreement can be reached. More than that though, Acas also provide an arbitration service where, if both the employer and the trade union agree, Acas will appoint an independent outsider to rule on the dispute after hearing from both sides. Although the ruling is not legally binding, both parties generally accept the decision, having agreed to the process in the first place. As can be seen, Acas has two main roles in industrial disputes. First, preventing them in the first place, and if that isn't feasible, resolving them as quickly as possible. So what did we learn in this presentation? Well, first of all, we found out what a trade union is. Then we went on to discover what industrial relations are. After that, we found out about the organisations involved in industrial relations. And then finally, we looked at the consequences of industrial action. The consequences that follow from an industrial dispute can be significant and severe for both an employer and employees. It is therefore essential that strong communication channels exist between a business and its employees' representatives. It is therefore no surprise that many organisations put in place measures to ensure they can work cooperatively and in conjunction with employees' trade union representatives, so that destructive industrial action is avoided.